I never thought I would become that woman, the one who lies awake at night, staring at the ceiling, wondering how her perfect marriage turned into a nightmare. My name is Eliza, and for 10 years, I believed I had built a life most women dreamed of. A loving husband, Daniel. A beautiful home. Stability. Respect. But love has a way of blinding you. And betrayal. Betrayal has a way of opening your eyes so painfully, you almost wish you'd stayed blind. It started with little things. Daniel's late nights at work. The sudden business trips that seemed to pop up out of nowhere. The way his phone, once casually left on the kitchen counter, was now glued to his hand. At first, I tried to rationalize it. He's working hard for us, I told myself. He's stressed. He needs space. But deep down, a seed of doubt began to grow. One evening, as I prepared dinner, I called him. He didn't answer. 10 minutes later, he texted back. In a meeting. Can't talk. But something inside me told me otherwise. And that something drove me to do what I'd never imagined I would: track his location. The address didn't match his office. My heart pounded. Hands trembling, I drove there. It was a small boutique hotel. Discreet. Hidden. The kind of place meant for secrets. I sat in my car for an hour, staring at the entrance, my body frozen with fear and anger. When he finally walked out, he wasn't alone. She was with him. A younger woman, beautiful in that polished, Instagram-perfect way. Her hand brushed against his arm, and the way he looked at her. God, I hadn't seen that look in years. That was the night I realized my marriage wasn't just in trouble. It was already shattered. But here's the thing. I didn't scream. I didn't confront him right then and there. Instead, I went home. I sat at the dining table, the food cold in front of me, and I made a decision. I would not let Daniel or his mistress destroy me. No, I would destroy them. For weeks, I played my role as the perfect wife. I cooked his favorite meals. I smiled when he came home late. I kissed him goodnight, even though I knew his lips still tasted of another woman. He thought he was clever. He thought he was winning. What he didn't know was that every move he made, I was watching. Every lie he told, I recorded in my mind. I started gathering evidence. Bank statements. Phone records. Hotel receipts that he carelessly left in his jacket pockets. The picture became clearer. Her name was Vanessa. She worked at a marketing firm. And she wasn't just a fling, she was trying to replace me. One evening, as Daniel showered, I scrolled through his phone. His passcode wasn't hard to guess. The messages made my stomach twist. She's clueless, baby. I can't wait for you to have everything. Soon, it'll be just us. And then, the one that broke me completely. She's boring, Vanessa. You're everything she'll never be. My hands shook, but I didn't cry. Not this time. Instead, I took screenshots. I sent them to my private email. Carefully. Quietly. The next day, while Daniel kissed my cheek and left for work, I sat in my room and whispered to myself, "You think your mistress won, Daniel? But you have no idea what I'm capable of." I began to plan. Not a messy confrontation. Not screaming or throwing clothes out the window. No, my revenge would be silent. Precise. The kind that stripped him of everything he valued. I learned about Vanessa. Her social media was a gold mine. She flaunted gifts I recognized, bracelets I had once picked out for myself but never received, trips Daniel claimed were business conferences. She thought she had one already. She thought she was stepping into my life. But she was stepping into a trap. One night, I lay in bed pretending to be asleep when Daniel whispered on the phone, "Yes, baby, I promise. Soon she'll be out of the picture." My blood boiled. My marriage vows, my sacrifices, my years of loyalty, he wanted to erase them like they were nothing. But I smiled in the dark because I knew something he didn't. The game had already shifted, and I wasn't the one losing anymore. I reached out to a lawyer, quietly, discreetly, a woman I trusted. I explained everything, showed her the evidence. She leaned back in her chair, tapping her pen against her lips. Eliza, if you follow through with this, you won't just be ending the marriage. You'll be destroying him. I met her gaze without flinching. That's exactly what I want. But before I could strike, I needed to be sure. I needed to see them together. So one Friday evening, I followed him again. My heart hammered as I watched him meet Vanessa at an expensive restaurant. They laughed, held hands across the table, kissed as though I didn't exist. And then I heard it. Daniel raising his glass, saying words that cut deeper than any knife. To us, Vanessa. To our future. To everything that's finally ours. In that moment, something inside me snapped. But I didn't storm in. I didn't cause a scene. No, that's what they would expect. Instead, I pulled out my phone and pressed record. I sat in my car afterward, watching the video over and over, my hands icy cold, but my mind blazing with clarity. They thought they were winning. They thought I was powerless. But the truth, they had just given me the weapon I needed to burn their world to ashes. And as I drove home that night, a wicked smile formed on my lips. Because Daniel had no idea that the woman he called boring, the woman he thought was weak, was about to become his worst nightmare. I whispered to myself, gripping the steering wheel tightly. Enjoy your victory while it lasts, Daniel. Because when I'm done, you'll be begging for mercy. The next morning, Daniel kissed my forehead before leaving for work, like he always did. To anyone watching, we looked like the perfect couple. But inside, my heart was ice. As soon as the door closed, I pulled out my laptop and opened the video I had recorded of him and Vanessa. His voice was clear, the words undeniable. To us, Vanessa. To our future. To everything that's finally ours. I replayed it again and again until my anger solidified into something sharper. Not tears, not despair, resolve. That day, I made 3 calls. The first was to my lawyer. Gather every financial record of Daniel's you can. I want to know where every dollar has gone. The second was to a private investigator. Follow them. I want pictures, videos, proof. Don't miss a single detail. And the third was to myself, because I knew I needed strength. I whispered into the mirror, Eliza, no matter how much this hurts, you are not a victim. You are the storm. Within a week, the pieces began to fall into place. The investigator handed me a folder thick with photos, Daniel and Vanessa holding hands in public, kissing outside her apartment, checking into hotels together. Every picture was another nail in the coffin of our marriage. But the financial records were worse. Daniel had drained our joint savings account. Thousands of dollars funneled into jewelry stores, luxury hotels, and consulting fees that were nothing more than gifts to Vanessa. He wasn't just cheating on me. He was funding her lifestyle with money I had helped earn, money I had sacrificed my dreams for. That night, I sat at the kitchen table with a glass of wine, staring at the evidence. When Daniel walked in, late as usual, I smiled. You look tired, I said softly. Yeah, long day, he muttered, avoiding my eyes. I wanted to throw the photos in his face, scream until the walls shook. But instead, I reached out, touched his hand gently, and whispered, I'm proud of you. You work so hard for us. He smiled, relieved, completely unaware of the storm brewing just inches away from him. Inside, I was screaming, You liar. You coward. You thief. A few days later, I got my chance to test him. Daniel, I said one morning, I've been thinking. Maybe we should start planning a little vacation. Just the 2 of us. Somewhere warm. He froze for just a second before forcing a smile. Yeah, sure, that sounds nice. But, Maybe later. Work's too busy right now. His voice cracked on the word later. I knew exactly why, because he had already planned a vacation. Just not with me. And I was right. The private investigator sent me pictures 2 weeks later. Daniel and Vanessa at the airport, boarding a flight together. Smiling. Holding hands. Acting like newlyweds. I sat in my car staring at the photos, my hands trembling with rage. So this is it, I thought. He's not even pretending anymore. But instead of breaking down, I opened my laptop and began writing. Not a letter. Not a confession. Plan. I started with Vanessa. Her social media was a gold mine. She flaunted the expensive bags, the trips, the mystery man she never named but hinted at. She had no idea the danger of leaving so many digital footprints. Screenshots of her posts, cross-referenced with Daniel's bank records, painted a picture so clear that even a blind man could see the affair. I saved every piece into a neatly organized folder. Then came Daniel's business. He prided himself on being a respected executive at his firm. But what would his colleagues think if they saw where the company funds had been going? What would his boss say if he found out Daniel was submitting false receipts, mixing personal expenses with corporate accounts? I smiled coldly. All I had to do was pull one string, and the life Daniel had built would unravel in seconds. But the hardest part wasn't the planning. It was the pretending. Every night, I lay beside him, listening to his steady breathing, imagining him with her. Every morning, I cooked his breakfast, packed his lunch, kissed him goodbye. He thought he was clever. He thought his mistress had already won. But every fake smile, every careful word I spoke, was another step closer to his destruction. One evening, as he came home late again, I asked casually, "How was work?" "Busy," he sighed, loosening his tie. I tilted my head, watching him. "You must be exhausted. You've been working late so often." He nodded, not meeting my eyes. If only he knew that at that very moment I had pictures of him at a beach resort with Vanessa, his arms wrapped around her, sipping cocktails while I sat at home waiting. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I sat in the living room, staring at the folder of evidence. And that's when it hit me, why should I only aim to destroy Daniel? Why not her too? Vanessa. The woman who thought she had won. The woman who smiled at my husband as though she had stolen something precious. She wasn't just part of his betrayal. She was proud of it. And that pride would be her downfall. The next day, I began phase 2 of my silent plan. I created an anonymous email account and attached the first batch of photos. Vanessa draped in jewelry Daniel bought with our money, her laughing in his arms at the resort, her posts flaunting her mystery man. But I didn't send them to Daniel. Not yet. I sent them to Vanessa's boss and to her company's HR department. 2 days later, chaos erupted. Daniel came home, slamming the door, his face twisted with anger. "She's been suspended from work," he shouted, pacing the living room. "Somebody sent pictures, emails, everything. They think she's in some unethical relationship." I hid my smile behind a concerned frown. "Oh no," I whispered, touching his arm gently. "That's terrible. Who would do such a thing?" He didn't suspect a thing. But I wasn't done. Not even close. That night, as Daniel ranted about Vanessa's troubles, I slipped into the bathroom, locked the door, and whispered to my reflection, "Don't worry, Vanessa. This is just the beginning. By the time I'm finished, both of you will regret ever crossing me." By the time Vanessa was suspended from her job, I could see the cracks forming in Daniel's perfect little fantasy. He tried to act calm, but every night he came home restless, pacing the floors, snapping at little things. Vanessa was calling him nonstop, demanding answers, crying about her ruined reputation. I would watch him from across the room, sipping my tea, pretending not to notice. Inside, I savored every second. Because this was only the beginning. A week later, my private investigator delivered something that nearly made me laugh out loud. Pictures of Daniel and Vanessa at the resort. Yes, I already had those. But these were even better. They showed Daniel handing a wad of cash to the hotel manager. A bribe. A pathetic attempt to keep the staff silent about his affair. What he didn't know was that the manager had happily taken the money and given up the security footage. Now I had proof of Daniel committing fraud. Proof of him embezzling money from our joint account and possibly his company's funds. And with one email, I could destroy his career. But I wasn't ready yet. No, timing was everything. Instead, I focused on planting seeds of doubt between him and Vanessa. One evening, when Daniel stepped into the shower, I unlocked his phone again. I typed a message to Vanessa, pretending to be him. I don't know if this is worth it anymore. You're causing too much trouble. Then, I deleted the message from his sent folder but left it in her inbox. The next day, he came home furious. She's accusing me of pulling away, of not supporting her. I don't even know what she's talking about. I bit my lip, pretending to hide a smile. Oh, sweetheart, I said softly. Maybe she's just stressed. You know, after losing her job. He groaned, rubbing his temples. She's becoming a liability. And just like that, the first wedge was driven between them. But Daniel was still arrogant. Still convinced that he could juggle us both. One night, he came home later than usual, smelling of perfume that wasn't mine. As he showered, his phone buzzed. A text from Vanessa. When are you finally going to leave her? I'm not waiting forever. I stared at the screen, my blood boiling. Leave me? He was planning to throw me away like garbage after everything I had done for him? I clenched my fists so hard my nails dug into my skin. But I didn't cry. Not anymore. Instead, I forwarded the message to my email for safekeeping. Another piece of evidence for the fire I was building. The next morning, I made pancakes for Daniel, humming softly in the kitchen. He sat down, scrolling through his phone, looking distracted. Rough night? I asked gently. Yeah, Vanessa's. She's being difficult, he muttered without thinking. I froze mid-pour, then forced a laugh. Vanessa? Who's that? His eyes shot up, panic flashing across his face. Oh, I meant a coworker. She's been giving me a hard time at the office. I smiled sweetly, pretending to buy the lie. But inside, I memorized every detail of his fear. He knew, even if only for a second, that I could catch him. And that fear was exactly what I needed. That night, I emailed myself the full collection of evidence. Screenshots of their texts. Pictures from the resort. Bank statements showing money flowing into Vanessa's hands. Security footage of Daniel's bribe. I organized it neatly into folders labeled and timestamped. It was enough to end his career, his reputation, his entire future. But I wasn't ready to hit send. Not yet. Instead, I waited. Because I knew Daniel. I knew his patterns. And I knew he was about to make the biggest mistake of his life. Sure enough, it came 3 days later. I was folding laundry when Daniel walked in, his expression unusually serious. Eliza, we need to talk. I turned, forcing a curious smile. Of course. What's wrong? He hesitated, then sighed heavily. I think, maybe we should take a break. The world tilted for a moment, but I kept my face calm. A break? Yeah, I don't feel like we're connecting anymore. Maybe some time apart will help us figure things out. I stared at him, pretending to process his words. But inside, I knew exactly what this meant. He was ready to replace me. He thought Vanessa had won. I swallowed hard, then nodded slowly. If that's what you need, Daniel. I just want you to be happy. His shoulders relaxed, relief flooding his face. He actually believed I was letting him go without a fight. That night, he slept soundly beside me while I lay awake, staring at the ceiling. So this is it, I thought. He's really going to do it. He's really going to throw me away. But instead of breaking down, I smiled in the darkness. Because he had just handed me the perfect excuse to unleash everything I had been saving. The next morning, while he showered, I sent the first batch of evidence. Not to Daniel, not to Vanessa, but to his boss. An hour later, as I sipped my coffee, Daniel stormed downstairs, his phone in hand, his face pale. "What the hell is going on?" he demanded. "What do you mean?" I asked sweetly. "My boss just called me in. There are pictures, Eliza, emails, accusations of fraud. He said if I don't explain myself, I'm finished." I widened my eyes in fake shock, covering my mouth with my hand. Oh my God, Daniel, who would do something like that? He glared at me, suspicion flickering in his eyes. But he shook his head quickly. No, it can't be you. You're too boring. I finished silently in my head, remembering his cruel words to Vanessa. And I smiled. As Daniel stormed out of the house, rushing to save his career, I whispered to myself, "You still think your mistress won, Daniel, but you have no idea how much more I have left to destroy." Daniel rushed out of the house that morning like a man on fire. He didn't even finish his coffee, didn't even kiss me goodbye. I stood by the window, watching his car disappear down the street, and for the first time in months, I felt a wave of peace. Because I knew exactly what awaited him at his office. By noon, my phone buzzed. It was a message from my lawyer. "Daniel has been suspended pending investigation. HR is involved. Fraud charges are possible." I smiled, setting the phone down slowly. Just like that, the mighty Daniel, the man who thought he could juggle me and Vanessa without consequence, was falling. When he came home that evening, his face was pale, his suit jacket wrinkled from stress. He tossed his briefcase onto the floor, running his hands through his hair. "They're accusing me of stealing company funds. Eliza," he shouted. "Do you know how insane that sounds?" I didn't do anything wrong. I tilted my head, feigning innocence. "Didn't you?" He froze, narrowing his eyes at me. "What's that supposed to mean?" I shrugged. "Daniel, you've been so secretive lately. Maybe they just found something suspicious in your accounts." His mouth opened, then closed. For a moment, I thought he might actually confess. But instead, he grabbed a drink and slumped onto the couch, muttering curses under his breath. But his problems didn't stop there. The next morning, my investigator delivered the second package. More photos. More evidence. This time, it wasn't just about Daniel. It was about Vanessa. She had been caught with another man. Not Daniel. Someone else entirely. I nearly laughed out loud as I flipped through the pictures. Vanessa, the perfect mistress, wasn't loyal to him either. She was using Daniel for money and gifts, but her real affections were elsewhere. Oh, the irony. That night, while Daniel sat sulking in his study, I left the photos on his desk. No note. No explanation. I waited upstairs, my heart pounding, listening for the inevitable explosion. 10 minutes later, it came. The sound of glass shattering against the wall. Then his voice, furious, breaking with rage. "You liar. You cheap lying." I smiled in the darkness. Vanessa's downfall was complete. And now, Daniel was alone. But I wasn't finished. Not even close. Because Daniel still had one thing left, our marriage. And he still believed, in his arrogance, that I was too weak to leave him. So I decided to give him the final blow myself. 2 days later, I invited him to dinner. He looked exhausted, disheveled, a shadow of the confident man he once was. "Eliza, I don't think I can do this right now," he muttered, rubbing his temples. I smiled sweetly. "Please, just sit with me. We need to talk." He hesitated, then sat. I served him carefully, pouring his wine, cutting into my steak as though nothing was wrong. For a moment, it almost felt like old times. The quiet dinners we used to share. The way I once looked at him with love instead of hatred. But that illusion shattered the second he opened his mouth. "Eliza," he said, his voice trembling. I made mistakes. But I want to fix this. I'll end things with Vanessa for good. I'll be better." I set my fork down slowly, staring at him. Better? After months of betrayal? After planning to replace me? My lips curled into a smile. "Oh, Daniel, it's far too late for that." He blinked, confused. "What do you mean?" I leaned forward, my voice soft but razor sharp. "I know everything. The lies. The hotels. The money you funneled to Vanessa. I know it all." His face drained of color. "Eliza, and don't bother denying it," I continued. "I have photos, texts, bank records, even video of you toasting to your future with her." His jaw clenched, his hands shaking. You've been spying on me?" "No," I whispered. "I've been protecting myself. While you were busy destroying our marriage, I was preparing to destroy you." He stood abruptly, knocking over his chair. "You don't know what you're talking about." "You?" I laughed bitterly, cutting him off. "Oh, I know exactly what I'm talking about. You thought your mistress won, Daniel. You thought you could humiliate me, take everything we built together, and throw me away like trash." I rose from my seat, stepping closer, my voice steady, cold. "But you underestimated me. And now you have nothing left." He stared at me, trembling, his eyes wide with fear for the first time. "Eliza, please, don't do this. I'll fix it. I'll change." I tilted my head. "Change? You're already finished, Daniel. Your company knows. Vanessa's gone. And soon, the whole world will see who you really are." His lips parted, but no words came. He looked like a man standing at the edge of a cliff, realizing too late that the ground beneath him had already crumbled. And then the doorbell rang. He flinched. "Who's that?" I smiled. "You'll see." He turned toward the door slowly, his hands still trembling, his body stiff with dread. Because what waited on the other side wasn't a neighbor. It was the beginning of his final destruction. Daniel's face went pale as the doorbell rang again, louder this time. I crossed my arms, watching him shake, and whispered under my breath, "Go on, Daniel. Open the door. It's time you meet the consequences of your betrayal." Daniel's hands trembled as he walked toward the door. The bell rang again, sharper this time, echoing through the house like a death knell. I didn't move. I just stood there, arms crossed, watching the man who once thought he was untouchable. Slowly, he pulled open the door. And there they were. Two men in dark suits, holding briefcases. My lawyer and an investigator from his company. "Mr. Carter?" one of them said firmly. Daniel's throat bobbed as he nodded. "You've been officially served. You're under investigation for financial misconduct and breach of contract. You'll need to surrender your company laptop, phone, and any relevant documents." Daniel's mouth opened, but no sound came out. I stepped into the doorway, my smile calm, almost serene. "Gentlemen, please. Come in." Daniel spun toward me, his face a mixture of rage and terror. You set this up." I raised a brow. "Did I? Or did you do this to yourself?" One of the men handed him a thick envelope. Inside were copies of every damning piece of evidence I'd gathered, his transactions to Vanessa, his falsified reports, his hotel bills. All neatly organized. All undeniable. Daniel's hands shook so violently the paper slipped onto the floor. "No, this can't be happening," he whispered. "Oh, but it is," I said softly. The men left after making arrangements for further questioning. Daniel collapsed onto the couch, his head in his hands, groaning like a man waiting for an execution. Eliza. His voice cracked.
Please.
You can't let them do this to me. You're my wife. I tilted my head, studying him. Wife? Now I matter to you? Funny, Daniel, because just weeks ago you were planning to replace me with Vanessa. He winced, guilt flashing across his face. Eliza, I was stupid. I thought she cared about me. But she betrayed me too. You're the only one I have left. I almost laughed. The irony was delicious. Now, when his empire was burning and his mistress had betrayed him, suddenly I was the only one. But I wasn't finished yet. I walked calmly to the coffee table, pulling out another envelope I had hidden. Do you know what this is, Daniel? I asked, placing it in front of him. He looked up, dread in his eyes. What now? Divorce papers, I said simply. His face drained of color. No, Eliza, you can't. Oh, I can. And I will. He lunged forward, grabbing my wrist. Eliza, please. Don't do this. I'll lose everything. My job, my reputation, my marriage, please, you can't leave me too. I pulled my hand free, my voice icy. You already left me, Daniel. The moment you chose her, you abandoned us. All I'm doing now is giving you what you deserve. He shook his head violently, tear swelling in his eyes. I'll change. I'll prove it to you. I'll beg if I have to. Begging won't save you, I whispered. The next weeks were chaos for him. His company suspended him indefinitely. Vanessa disappeared with the last of the money he gave her. His friends stopped answering his calls. And me? I filed for divorce. When he realized I was serious, he broke down completely. One night, he showed up at my parents' house where I had been staying temporarily. He knelt on the porch in the rain, drenched and desperate, shouting my name. Eliza. Please, don't leave me. I'll do anything. Just give me one more chance. I opened the door slowly, looking down at the man who once stood so tall, now on his knees in the mud. You should have thought of that before you played with my heart, Daniel. He sobbed, clutching my hand. I was blind. I was stupid. You're the only woman I've ever truly loved. Don't let this be the end. For a fleeting second, I felt the ghost of the love we once had. The memories of laughter, of promises, of the man I married. But then I remembered the lies, the humiliation, the betrayal, and my heart turned cold again. I knelt down slightly, whispering into his ear so only he could hear. This isn't the end, Daniel. This is justice. Then I pulled my hand away, stood tall, and closed the door in his face. From that day forward, he was a broken man. Jobless, mistressless, loveless. And me? I was free. I built myself back up, piece by piece. I found strength in places I never knew existed. And every time I saw my reflection, I smiled. Because the woman staring back at me wasn't a victim anymore. She was a survivor. He thought his mistress had won. But in the end, it was me who walked away victorious, leaving Daniel on his knees, begging for a mercy I would never give. The end.